News senior correspondent and author of the new children's book, Read All About It. Now, CENTCOM also releasing this new video of long-range missiles used in Operation Epic Fury. The Pentagon says this is the first time these long-range precision strike missiles were used in combat and that they provide, quote, unrivaled deep strike capabilities. Iran has attempted to retaliate, but Secretary Hegseth says the regime is far outmatched. Trey Yangst is live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Trey.
Yeah, Kaylee, right now we have air raid sirens that are sounding across Israel's second largest city of Tel Aviv. Off in the distance right now, we don't see any sort of interceptions, but there are sirens sounding across the entirety of central Israel. Throughout the day, the Iranians have continued these missile launches. The Israeli military telling Fox News that dozens of missiles have been launched into Israel throughout the day. Overnight, there was about an 8-hour lull in the outgoing fire from Iran, and we do know both the U.S. and Israel are going after these launching positions. According to the Pentagon, 86% decrease is what we're looking at since the first day of Operation Epic Fury, and I just want to look at my phone here. So sirens are also sounding in the West Bank and again across central Israel, and at this moment they're going to try to shoot down some of this incoming fire. Okay, and just stay with me here. Hey, you need to pan up to the sky. You're going to see there's a little bit of debris in the distance. Just stay with us for one moment. It does appear some interceptions are taking place, but they're just on the outskirts of the city. And so when these sirens go off, people have just a few moments to get to shelters. These sirens are echoing throughout the center part of this country. Earlier today, what we saw was a concerted effort by Iran and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah to fire at the same time, trying to overwhelm Israel's air defense systems. They were unsuccessful in doing that, but it is a challenge for the civilians of Israel who have spent the past 4 days in bomb shelters as this war develops.
Trey Yangst, thank you, and as always, stay safe. Now, we have the privilege of having Ben Hall with us here, and Ben, we're going to talk about your book in a little bit, but we have the benefit of the majority of your professional experience being in the Middle East and covering it. So share with us your thoughts on how this is developing and what you think we see from here.
Well, I would start off by saying that for the last 15, 20 years, I've worked in the Middle East, and the story I have heard from day one is how Iran and its terror groups are the ones destabilizing the region, spreading the terror out. So what we are seeing now is an objective to remove their weapons, to remove their missiles, to decapitate them as well. And you heard Secretary of War earlier and General Kane saying that that was moving ahead of the expected speed. So it is going well at the moment, and I think that if the priority is to do that, they're doing it well. And I think that we're amazed to see some new technology being used, some new weapons being used by the US, and showing that there is no military might like them in the world. There is a big question about what comes next and how the regime might fall and who could take their place. But you can't really begin looking at that until you have removed the regime itself, or at least removed the hierarchy of the regime. But it's really fascinating to see, and it's fascinating to see the impact this will have not only on the region but on the world. You look at the impact in the relationship with China. You look at how the US will also be able to reduce oil prices if Iran is free. And so, look, a lot of things happening at the moment, but certainly good progress at the moment.
Can I ask your point of view on the shift, given your substantial years of experience sort of viewing this, that it seems to be our allies have really strengthened regionally there, and that Europe plays in this, at least in this particular conflict, it seems a little bit more of a back seat role. So can you sort of comment on how we look in terms of strategically aligned with so many more Middle Eastern provinces?
Yeah, and you heard President Trump yesterday saying that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, was no Winston Churchill. Where was the UK when the US needed them? When the US needed to use Diego Garcia, this incredibly important airbase, to launch their B-2s from, they weren't there. And now eventually we are seeing the UK get involved because their bases have been hit. Their base in Cyprus has been hit. Now Germany, which wasn't involved of before. One of their bases has been hit in Erbil. One of their bases in Jordan has been hit. And finally, they are coming on board. But where were they when the US said, we are taking down this regime, we are getting rid of its weapons, we are going to hit its nuclear facilities? Where were those allies at that point? They weren't there. And President Trump will remember that. In terms of the Gulf states and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, those countries also said at the beginning, no, we don't think there should be a war, you shouldn't get into it. Who were the first countries that were attacked by Iran? Those very countries. And it's interesting to see how they are now finally getting on board, when everyone's finally realizing that the Iranian regime will target people, luxury apartments, hotels, airports. They are after anyone and everything. I think finally people are realizing that it's time to hit them when they have to be hit.
Yeah. Kaylee, as we were speaking or receiving Trey's incredible reporting, the sirens going off and sort of the constant barrage, I thought about my constant WhatsApp threads with my friends there in Tel Aviv who talk about sort of the constant fear and this sort of new way of life. For example, one friend who just had a baby, she doesn't want to leave the hospital because it's an hour away from home. And one of my friends who while in transit, had to pull over for the sirens, seeking shelter in sort of a concrete tube. The point is that this is a phase of existence for them, which is in and out of shelters. So you don't really want to be too far away from a shelter at any point in the day. But importantly, I note that one of my friends say this, it's challenging, but there is a strong atmosphere of resilience, he says, in Israel. People are very hopeful that Trump and the U.S. and Israel allies will manage to lay the ground for regime change to happen from within Iran. We're preparing physically and mentally for a few weeks of this uncomfortable situation with a strength symbol. So it seems that these costs that are occurring right now, at least for our allies and for Israel, they are prepared to pay.
Yeah, and should the dynamic change in Iran, the people of Israel who have had to deal with this their entire existence will have to deal with this no longer for the first time. Safety and security and no worries of October 7th. Let me start. Emily, you've spoken so beautifully to our service members over there over the last few days, and we learned some of the names of the fallen today. Cody Cork, 35, he was in Lakeland, Florida. That's just down the road from where I lived in Plant City. It hits home when someone perishes as a hero so close to you. Nicole Amore, I should say, she was in Minnesota. Noah Tehans, Nebraska, and Declan Cody was just 20 years old. So imagine being a 20-year-old your whole life ahead of you, and he sacrificed for our country. Let me speak to why their sacrifice is so important. In Georgetown School of Foreign Service, we studied nuclear weapons a lot, and the academics would always talk about mutually assured destruction. And basically, if you fire a nuke, the other power will fire a nuke. But that entire dynamic rests upon the notion that you have rational state actors. I firmly believe that Iran was not a rational state actor. And I can say that confidently now. And why can I say that? Because they were encircled by an armada of the United States. They knew they were staring down the barrel of the United States military and the Israeli military, and they still refused to negotiate. In fact, they gloated, according to Steve Witkoff, about having enough material for 11 nuclear weapons. This is a regime chanting death to America. This is a regime, when they came under attack, what did they do? They attacked their neighbors, Saudi Arabia, who was staying neutral in this, who said the U.S. cannot use our air bases. They attacked their friends. So this is why they are not a rational state actor. It's distinct from North Korea, where, look, Kim Jong-un, all kinds of crazy, but he is rational, meets with President Trump, talks, not shouting death to America. The Iranian regime was irrational, and they could never have a nuclear weapon. And President Trump should be thanked from stopping that from ever happening.
Yeah, such a distinction between the Islamic Republic and the people of Iran, who felt so differently and who are all the people committed to this peace and just exciting liberation. And Kaylee, let's talk about the public perception of that. So, for example, we have a Fox News poll, we can pop that up on the screen, that shows that 61% of registered voters say that Iran poses a real national security threat to the United States. As well, a Fox News poll showing a 50-50 split among registered voters on approval of U.S. strikes on Iran. Now, note that 50-50 is up in the approval percentage from when the strikes began, which showed a much more lopsided percentage. How do you see that representing in the States?
Yeah, I think the sticking point is over how long this action is going to last. I think that there is broad approval for it in a limited capacity, but the longer that it drags on, I think you're going to see public opinion start to wane. And I see a pretty clear generational divide, actually, when it comes to public opinion on this issue. Based on my own conversations with other Gen Zers, I tend to find that many young Americans are more wary of military action overseas in Iran and elsewhere than our parents and our grandparents. But I think that that's largely because my generation has grown up in an era of unprecedented peace. And we grew up in an era of unprecedented peace because of U.S. military strength. And how is U.S. military strength maintained? Through strong deterrence. So I see President Trump's actions in Iran as a continuation of that. And I do think that this is actually an opportunity for younger Americans to carve a third path when it comes to foreign policy. I think that the debate is so often framed in terms of forever wars or no action at all. But maybe there's